All right, hello. Photo One, I wanted to post a real quick Photoshop video today demonstrating how to simulate background blur in your photograph if you are using pictures from your phone or from like an auto mode camera where you are not able to use the aperture priority mode to create the shallow depth of field that can really help to create some emphasis on your subjects, whether they're people or things, in your foreground. So the idea of depth of field is that range of focus from the nearest to the furthest object that are in acceptable focus, depending on where you focus in your scene. So you can focus like halfway through, or whether you focus in the front or the back, there's going to be a similar depth of field in either of those spaces. So it's basically referring to the range of focus, like, you know, how far behind, how far in front of that area where you focus, whether it's that your whole scene is in focus, like on F22, or if just a very shallow, very small area is in focus, like on F2. So we're going to be creating that shallow depth of field focus effect today with Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I have a picture here in Photoshop that I have opened. And this is an image of two models that are in a post-apocalyptic photo shoot that I did over the summer. So it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of examples where I did use some shallow depth of field, but this one here has more of like a medium depth of field. So it's not super sharp in the background. You can see there's still some blur on where the moss is, but we could probably have more attention on our subjects if I blurred that out completely, simulating that F2 or F1.4 very, very shallow depth of field, very small F number. Okay, so in order to do this, to create this shallow depth of field blurred background effect, you want to always start by making a copy of your background. No matter what you're doing, having a copy is going to help so that in case you maybe blur it too much, or your selection was off a little, or there's something that you have to go back and edit or correct, that image is saved in the background here. It's kind of like having an insurance policy. I usually hide it, and then I can always come back to it if I need it. So the first step is going to be to making a selection of your subjects, what you do want in focus. So, and there's, again, 2 or 3 ways to do anything in Photoshop. So this is just one way. I'm going to use this quick selection tool. These 3 tools here, tool families, are all your different selection tools you have access to. I really like the quick selection tool because it's just seems easier to almost paint a selection, if you will. So just click and drag, and it kind of finds the edge of that color. So notice it's kind of finding her hair. It's getting a little lost in the background. So I want both of these people to be in focus here. And then I'll go back and kind of clean up my selection. And with the background blur, especially when the background is a little blurry already, it does not have to be a precise selection like it would if you were maybe changing the color or doing something a little bit more obvious. Okay, so I can see, oh, gotta get this part. I have a basic selection of everything in my foreground. Notice that, I don't know if we zoom in a little bit, if you can see on this cursor, there's like a plus sign in the middle. So if you want to subtract from the selection now, you hold down the Option key, and it'll go from a plus sign to a minus sign. So then you can just kind of click and try and narrow that selection to just our people. Okay, something like that. Now, I always like to refine my edge when I have finished making a selection such as this. So we got to get our fingers in there. And this will allow us to see very quickly what we have selected. So I'm going to go up here on the options bar where it says select and mask. I'm going to go ahead and see that preview there. I can see everywhere that is red is outside my selection, and everywhere that is the preview area, that is my selection. So I'm going to hold down Option and click and see if I can't get rid of this now. Yeah, it's not working. All right, well, it shows me a preview of where I can go and edit now. So let's go back here and hold down Option. And just click and click. This part is probably okay. All right. So on that refine edge, oops, I have the spinning wheel of death. What did I do? So on that refine edge option, I'm going to go back and try and feather that edge. I may have to restart this video if the spinning wheel of death doesn't leave me alone. Go away. Okay, so now on refine edge, we are going to increase the feather option, and you can kind of see what happens to our outline here. It just softens that a little bit so that it won't be as obvious what the difference is between the area that's right now in red and the area that I have selected. So it's kind of softening that transition between the two spaces. So let's see how it goes. We click OK. Now I still have my selection here. I'm going to copy and paste this to its own layer. So edit, copy, edit, paste, and having different layers just helps you work in your workspace and keep it organized. So right now I can rename this layer 1 as these are my people. And then my background copy is what I'm going to blur. So if I blur the background copy, the people will still be sharp because they're on a separate layer above. And then this background copy is going to be blurred. So in order to create blur, I'm just going to go under the filter menu. And then there's a whole blur category. So you're going to select Gaussian blur, or you can do lens blur, looks good as well. Let's just choose the Gaussian blur. And you can see automatically how crystal clear that contrast is between the clear focused people and then the really blurry background. So here I have my Gaussian blur. I can make it more or less of an effect. The more I make it blurred, the more obvious it is where that transition point is between the figures and the background. So you probably want to blur it a little bit less, but still have that effect. Click OK. And then maybe we want to even go in here and erase some of this layer, the people layer here. So you can see out of focus, in focus, out of focus, in focus. So I might want to even use like a paintbrush. I like to add a layer mask in order to delete parts of a layer because I don't like doing anything that's destructive. So in case I want to come back and undo it, I still can if I add a layer mask. So I'm just clicking once on this rectangle at the bottom of my layers panel that has a little circle in the middle. So this is a white mask will reveal the whole layer. If it was a black mask, it would hide the whole layer. So any part that you add that's black to this mask will be hidden, and any part that's white will be revealed. So if I use my brush tool and I have my black as the foreground color, I'm going to come in here. I want to select kind of a simple brush, and I want to make it a little bit smaller so I can get into some of the details. And I want it to be a little bit less hard so that it has more of that feathered edge. And now, painting with black on my mask, I can erase, and you might have to increase the opacity a little bit, but I can erase that edge. And you might even want to zoom in on what you're doing so you can make sure that you have control. There we go. So that's kind of getting rid of some of that obvious contrast between the in focus and the out of focus background. I'm basically just using my paintbrush as an eraser right now. So I'm erasing this part of the people layer wherever I click and drag. So that can create, kind of compensate for that feathered edge that you've added earlier. Maybe just whoop, erase the whole thing. There's kind of a balance between the edge being blurred and helping to show that in focus look. You might even want to get rid of some of these elements in here pretty easily. There we go. And it might need some more, maybe a smaller brush to get into some of those crevices. So that's basically how you simulate the background blur effect in a photograph that you take on your cell phone, or with a great depth of field, you can always push and pull with Photoshop and create that blurry background, that bokeh effect, as they call it, that creates a lot of emphasis on your figures.